And now, here are our big men on campus. Mad Dog Unleashed tournament analyst Jerry Wainwright.
Jerry, what do you see here first? Give me a little overview of what you've seen these first three games. Really the two right now that play in the second half. ODU against Butler and a Clemson, West Virginia game. Give me a common denominator if you can find one here.
Well, I think the one that has the most interest, Chris, in all honesty, is the Clemson, West Virginia game because it's the first of its kind where there's actually a play-in for a seed. Clemson playing really, less than 38 hours ago, coming in and playing right away, right in now what is called the second round of the tournament. And it's interesting to see how they responded. They were game ready in the first half. It looks like West Virginia got their legs, and West Virginia has really been playing well since about the 15, 16-minute mark of the first half and continued well into the second half. So I still think, as you said, I think this game's going right to the wire. And again, it's David and Goliath, and I don't mean in terms of stature of their program. Old Dominion's size versus Butler's guards, and Butler's going to have to make some threes. I think they're hanging. The longer they hang, the more dangerous they'll get because obviously what's going to happen, Chris, if Butler's ahead late, that means Old Dominion has to come out of the zone. They're going to have to play smaller, and then all of a sudden it becomes Butler's game if Butler's ahead late in the game. So it'll be interesting to see it. The 5-6 minute mark, if Butler can get up 4 or 5, Old Dominion's got decisions to make to come out and play man-to-man, and then Butler's going to be really in command, I think. Now
they have the ball down to 57 seconds ago. It's an odd time because obviously 2 for 1. What do you want Princeton to run here, Jerry? What do you see?
Well, they're gonna run their offense. I don't be surprised if they don't take it to the basket. They get you spread out. It's somewhat the same scenario you were talking about before, Dog, with the last thing you're going to give up if you're Kentucky's a three, right? So the floor,
I would. He's not shooting a three in this spot.
Right. I mean, I don't want to be down going into the last possession if I'm Kentucky. So they're going to extend a little bit, and even Princeton's offense is really geared towards spreading you out and driving. Now that means you're going to have to score over a shot blocker. So it'll be interesting to see what they do in the huddle. But I wouldn't be surprised to see a driving attempt and maybe a kick out by Princeton on this. I know it's a big time shot, and that's kind of the move now of the millennium. That step back jump shot. Jordan kind of put his earmark on it when he didn't have the legs he did late in his career. It's very, very hard to defend because your momentum is going to stop the drive. And really, Dog, one of the things that there's an older kid. He's got really strong core. His legs, you can tell he's a senior because when he stopped, he had strength enough to get elevation on his shot because really Liggins had his hand up and made that shot tougher than it seemed.
What do you say?
Well, I don't think you better put your ego in the locker and put 2 locks on it. I think you have to play for the last shot. Now, obviously, I would play to make sure. You have to remember. I believe Kentucky is under the foul limit. I don't.
Princeton, yeah.
So I think you could be kamikaze on the offensive glass if you're Kentucky.
Next foul for Princeton is over the limit. Only 3 team fouls for Kentucky. There you go.
Right. So I think you can really be aggressive on the offensive glass. So maybe at about the 7 or 8 second mark, try to get in the lane, try to get a shot, but really use your athletic ability to get on the glass.
What a first basket of the game. One-on-one play. There was no design there. Calipari cleared it out. Brendan, go get us a hoop. What'd you see there with 20 seconds to go?
Well, that's, unfortunately, I think the youngster from Princeton, the last 5 seconds of the shot clock, now you got to square somebody up, Dog, and
can't let him cut the corner there, right?
Right, and when the ball's in the middle of the floor, you have to make him spin. You have to make him do something. There's no direct lines to the basket, and he just put his head down and went. And again, Princeton was spread out a little bit, and it's just one of those things. So it'll be interesting to see how they play this. Whether Kentucky puts a man on the ball to try and force a deflected long pass. This will be an interesting last second call by Princeton.
That's a hard shot. Jerry, you got to be fair. That's not an easy basket.
No, well, I mean, I think he got bumped off line. Now, I would. Here's what I would question: if he had missed that shot, would he have blown the whistle?
Interesting point. And that's Pat Driscoll. Is he a good official?
He's a nice man. I'm. He's a very nice man. I got a lot of those, Donnie. I got a lot of those Oshkosh by gosh wherewithals, especially now that I've been asked to retire. I do a lot of stuff out with my wherewithals on. But it was interesting before when you called timeout on your last possession. Mad Dog looked at me and he said, "What do? Do you go for the, you go for the tie or you go for the win?" And I said to him, I think when you're in that position, what you're going to try to do is get a really clear shot and allow a rebound, which is obviously kind of a consistent commandment in coaching. But I thought what you did really well was you put the ball in a older player's hands, and you allowed him to make that decision based on his read. And, as he kind of rejected the ball screen, it was a very similar shot to what Kemba Walker made the other night in the Big East tournament. And it was kind of a step back. And he used his size. That was a picture-perfect jump shot. But what did you tell your kids, prior to that happening out on the floor?
Well, I told them in the timeout, Coach, believe it or not, I said, look, I envisioned this. I woke up at 2:30 this morning. I didn't go back to bed. I'm telling my team now this. I'm saying I thought if we're down 1 or we're down 2 with the ball late in the game, what are we going to run, man or zone?
Give me a little rundown. What happened at Clemson? What happened at 40-31 in the first half in this game?
Well, you and I were watching the game, Chris, and just as fans, and yet whenever a bad shot is taken, that starts a run. You and I were talking about shot selection. And all of a sudden, Clemson, because they were shooting the ball so well, I think got a little bit out of sorts. They took some shots that they made. Maybe, I don't mean they were lucky early on, but, sometimes the ball falls. Sometimes a bad shot is made. It gives you a little bit too much confidence. And I thought they shot the ball way too early in their possessions in the last couple minutes, gave West Virginia extra possessions. And as oftentimes happens, I think West Virginia had 3 putback baskets in the last 2.5 minutes. And, of course, the last possession, right at the buzzer, they make a 3 to tie it. So momentum really, really shifted at halftime. And now Clemson has to fight back up that hill to get back into this game.
What's your thoughts? 5:25 to go, West Virginia by 10.
Well, again, I think Brad Brownell's decision at Clemson is how soon does he want to start fouling. And, traditionally this year for West Virginia, both these teams have had trouble at times closing games. And it really comes down to free throw shooting. This game could be on for another 2 days. The last 5 minutes could take a long time because I think what will happen is I think Brad will start substituting bench players. The Clemson coach, he'll start substituting to get more possessions. He's going to start fouling. And, they're a better three-point shooting team. They just missed an open 3. But if West Virginia's really got to tighten up their three-point defense, and again, when you're coming from behind and you're a team that's not explosive, it's difficult. Really, West Virginia has to make mistakes now for Clemson to win. Right. I think, again, though, I just think that this game's going to turn into a real nail-biter because of a couple things. Missing free throws becomes contagious, and just even that one miss right there by the youngster,
West Virginia kid.
Any kind of doubt put in kids' minds, and obviously what's going to happen now, as is West Virginia's going to extend their defense, and again, that's why you get a tip dunk because nobody's underneath the basket on a three-point shot. This game will turn out to be closer than you think, and there's no gimmies right now with that much time. And again, I'm not real confident in West Virginia's free throw shooting. Well, obviously the foul call is
good call or bad call.
Yeah, well, technically he's fouled. Those are game-changing calls, and it's just the way the game. Unfortunately,
I say you don't call that. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I think I think when you're not trying to advance as an official in conference play, that's not a call. That's just the way it is, and I'm not. Saying,
I see. In other words, if they're not worrying about getting to the next game, they let that call go.
Right, because these games are really evaluated. And again, now let's say he does fall. And they say it's a foul, and then Coach Huggins has But here's coaching though, Dog. They hadn't played 1-3-1 the whole game, and Coach Huggins just substituted the kid who got the 2 layups for Truck Bryant, put him on the top of a 1-3-1, and he gets 2 steals because he's 6'6".
I didn't pick that up.
Yeah, and to have the courage as a coach.
So Huggins put down in that spot. He put the kid up there at the 1-3-1 and got the 2 steals.
Right. He's a little bit longer. And
there's another one. He just got 3 consecutive steals.
Right.
The ball got knocked out of bounds. He almost got 3 consecutive steals in his spot, and it's because Huggins put the 1-3-1 half-court trap in there.
Right.
Well, I don't call it a half-court trap, just a 1-3-1,
1-3-1 extended zone, right? And, the good thing about, what's interesting about this, too, and not to be overly technical, Coach Huggins never played 1-3-1 ever until he got to West Virginia. John Beilein always played 1-3-1. And to give Bobby credit, when he took John's team over, and they had those real good teams when Coach Beilein left, he allowed those kids to play 1-3-1 because they had learned it over a 3-year period of time, and Coach Huggins learned it while they literally, his team taught it to him, and he's used it effectively since, and it's become another weapon of his. And obviously, it's like anything else. It's when you use it, and he used it for a few possessions, took Clemson out of rhythm, took him time to get organized, and obviously had the courage that he's not afraid of them giving up a three-pointer, but they were going to be aggressive with it, and it turned into steal.
What you're taking a no time out there.
Right. Well, I mean, first of all, it's a tie game, so, he has control of the ball.
Worst he's going to get is overtime.
Right. And again, everybody talks about timeouts, but then you have to deal with getting it in. And not saying he was afraid of that, but that takes time. So, again, ODU did not pressure. They had pressured every possession up to when they tied. They were up full court. And then he went back, and obviously he was playing for overtime. He was not, Coach Taylor, he was not out aggressively trying to turn Butler over. And so that put all the cards in Brad's hands, the coach of Butler. And so, he's got a veteran team, and he allowed them to play. Now, my only problem with the whole thing is when they started it. They got the ball. They started that play at 7 seconds, and that's a tough go, especially against big players, because every shot's going to be challenged. Youngster got lucky. He really jammed the pass in there. And, one of the things the announcers didn't talk about, what a great play their post that Butler made, just getting his hand on it.
Keep
and
the ball
it
alive.
Exactly. And, again.
I think that was Howard who did that, if I'm not mistaken.
It was the other kid, Smith. Man, but
Smith did, who was in foul trouble in the second half.
Right. And, again, Coach Stevens did a great job balancing those two guys with 4 fouls.
That's right. Howard scored. Smith kept the ball alive.
Right. But, again, as you and I talked about, the ball finds good players. The reason that Howard was there, he left the top of the circle and went and followed the ball and was there when it was deflected. So, again, he's a senior. He played in the Final Four. There's a reason why he's a good player. And he was, they say that, he's opportunistic. That means you've taken advantage of an opportunity. So he finished the play, and it's a great win.
All right, Jerry, let's start here. Let's recap the fans who just joined us. They want to know what happened in the Clemson game against West Virginia first. Clemson on a short turnaround, a 9-point lead. They got caught at the half. They were down in the whole second half, a chance late, end up losing the game by 8. Give them a little thumbnail on that game first. Go ahead.
Well, I think, you kind of hit the initial flow of the game, I think, in the last 5-6 minutes, Chris, you saw some great coaching moves. You saw Brad Brownell, the coach of Clemson, go to 2-3 zone, even though he was down, rather than pressure. He rolled the dice. He didn't get panicked by the time, and he showed his zone to West Virginia, who hadn't seen it, probably didn't expect it, and it got him right back into the game. It got him close to 3, I think. And then, bang, out of a timeout, all of a sudden, Coach Huggins went 1-3-1. And after 2 free throws, and it took a 5-point lead on 2 possessions in about a 10-second span, and all of a sudden was up 9. And, again, the ability for kids in tournament play to react, to understand change, that's really what coaching's all about. All coaches would love to get to the 4-minute mark in a game and be able to have an effect on the game. And I think we've seen in these early 2 games, coaches really have an effect on the game. Again, Coach Stevens made some moves, Coach Taylor made some moves, and certainly, as we just said in the Clemson-Virginia game, there was an awful lot of good coaching in there to make it a terrific game.
Make a long story short, Butler had the ball, 31 seconds to go in a tie game, and Brad Stevens did not elect to call a timeout. Once you run through that play for him, some strategy on both sides, Jay. What happened there?
Well, leading up to that, Dog, I think it won't be written about, but again, based on size, Butler did something they normally don't do. They played both their big guys for a majority of the game. And as we saw early in the second half, both big guys had 3 fouls. And he continued to keep them in there because I think, again, I thought Brad Stevens did a great job putting his team in a position to play because he kept them big. And he gambled. And then once one of them got 4, he started the rotation. As you know, both of those kids had 4 fouls at the end of the game. But in the biggest possession of the game, the last possession, they were both in there. He finessed, really, the foul situation, and really the only 2 big guys he had to have them in the biggest possession. Again, obviously on a broken play, late in the shot clock, game on the line. Van Zandt drives, the ball's deflected, and the 6'11 kid, Smith, makes an unbelievable play just to keep it alive.
Long arms, huh, Jerry?
Yeah,
Long
yeah,
arms.
and just big enough. I mean, he's big enough. If a 6'6 kid doesn't make that. Well, what I see is, Coach Patino is unbelievably composed. He always has been, and he's playing zone, dog, and what the temptation is when you're ahead is, let's let that clock run down. And as you said, really, were they 2 excellent defensive possessions or were they 2 short possessions? Because what happened was, again, Moorhead let that thing get down to about 10 before they attacked. So really, Louisville only guarded for 10 seconds. Now, the risk is if they score, you've lost the time and the points. But, sometimes you lose your mojo when you kind of hang and try and score at the end of the clock. And if it goes against you, then all of a sudden that room gets a little bit tighter. And this is a really, really key possession for Moorhead, how aggressive they'll be.
What is Moorhead? First of all, does Moorhead take over for the win here, Jerry, and not worry about the overtime, or do they play for the overtime and try to get to the free throw line? How would you play from that perspective?
Well, that's an interesting question because, again, I don't know the quality of each one of their three-point shooters. They're going to get a three-point shot if they want it, especially if Louisville stays zone, because if the ball goes inside, now as you saw in the last possession that they had, Louisville didn't trap and didn't help on Fareed. They locked in on the outside players. So you have to test them inside. If the ball goes inside, and it's one-on-one, Freed's got to take. I mean, he's been your guy all year. Just came off 2 made free throws. I mean, you've got to reward his career by giving him a chance to tie the game. However, he better be ready to pass it if they trap. And the interesting thing, as you saw in this game, Dog, was that Jennings didn't gamble. He played behind. Again, kids have to think on the fly. And obviously, if the youngster pump fakes, he's going to be at the free throw line to win the game. This was an all-out commitment by the young, Fareed. I mean, that's an easy block for him. But you got to give Moorhead credit because they forced the ball to be thrown back and to be dribbled by Siva. Siva didn't control the middle of the court either, Dog. He had to come up a third. So all the defense was on one side of the court, and it made it for a very, very tough shot. But certainly you have to give credit because it would have been very easy for these kids to quit when Louisville went ahead. They didn't. I feel really bad for Preston Knowles. He's a great kid. For him not to be in the clutch after what he's done for that team throughout his career certainly makes a difference, but not to diminish from what Moorhead State just did.
Are you shocked by this result?
Yes.
What's the thoughts about Duke? Go ahead.
Well, we even, we said during the break, Chris, he's not controlling his speed, which is really oftentimes as you watch guards, that's what you really see when they do come back. You even said, he's trying too hard. I think, his game has always been the ability to choose his acceleration points. And right now he doesn't know how hard to put the foot down on the pedal. I mean, first of all, his conditioning is probably a little bit subpar. But you lose a little bit of that movement and what's an effective move off speed when you sit out. So, obviously each play he plays, he's going to get better. The rust starts to come off. And as we talked about, I think the best way to bring kids back is play them in bursts and extend the bursts in a game. So, as an example, maybe play him for 2 minutes straight, and then the next run he gets, try to get him to maybe 2.5 to 3 minutes, and then hopefully maybe at some point in his game play him 4 or 5 minutes straight, because that'll be how you can gauge what you're going to do in the next game, especially with only a day in between. And certainly you would think that in this game they'll be able to not experiment, but they'll certainly be able to use him in kind of a therapeutic way, because I don't necessarily know, and I just can't believe that Hampton's going to test the other kids that do. We've talked about this before where they've lost 10 of their last 15, Villanova. Yeah. I noticed there was a big article about Corey Fisher in one of the papers in New York today about confidence, and where confidence really shows. He had a great first half. I don't know if he scored here in the second half. again, they've had opportunities to take a 5-point, 7-point lead to 9 or 11, and when you miss those opportunities, much like we were just talking about a second ago, Chris, when Gonzaga said, "Okay, to me, the first one to blink loses," and you have to hold steady. And right now, I'm not so sure that Villanova's playing to win, or rather playing not to lose. And that's a critical thing with the way they play basketball, because they do take a lot of jump shots.
Correct.
Well, what's interesting, the way that game was kind of officiated down the stretch, there was a lot of contact on that step back. And what if the Villanova kid had flopped? I mean,
offensive foul to push off.
Again, if you go
sort of Jordan Byron Russell in that Utah.
If you look back on that, he really led with his shoulder. Where the shots we saw, like for instance the step back from Morehead State, there was a footwork step back. Kemba Walker's was a foot, with limited contact, but it's one way, obviously, a way to create space.
Who would you bring in there historically? 10 years, and he's going to build you a winning program. He's not going to embarrass you academically. I'm not trying to tell you he's going to give you Rhodes Scholars, but he's not going to embarrass you academically. Give me a couple guys in mind. Go ahead.
Well, I think it's hard to, I think it's really, really hard to get away from certain facts, and again, take personalities out of it in terms of where they're at right now. But if you look traditionally at people that get you off and running, and have shown a dynamic in the worst of situations to build programs, and have done it at successive levels, I think it would be pretty difficult right now to discount John Calipari, because in a horrendous situation initially, he goes from being competitive at UMass to Final Four, really kind of transforms the Memphis program, and really has put a different touch on Kentucky. Now, again, I know there's agendas and all kinds of things, but the one thing that John has always been able to do is identify talent. He's always been able to appeal to talent, and more than that, he's been able to coach talent, which is not easy. So I think it's difficult. Now again, that's going back. You have to make a case for somebody like Mike Krzyzewski, because he did a good job at Army, and he transcended the program. The program at Duke.
Oh, it was a disaster before he got there.
Right, and it's still Duke. But if you look at, of course, the people would argue back, well, it was that time he was able to get certain kinds of kids academically and everything else. But the thing that Mike does, and I'll tell you a quick story. When I got in the ACC, and I had known him, obviously he's a Chicago guy, and I'd known him for a long time. I remember my first year in the ACC, I talked to him. I said, Coach, I got to ask you something. I said, you got all these players, and all these great players, and that was obviously when he really started to get it going. Amaker and Billis and all those guys. He had just coached
at Mark Allery,
right. I mean, and they were starting to flood in, and I said, what do you? How do you do this? How do you keep everybody happy? And he said, well, he told me two things. He said, number one, he said winning takes care of a lot of problems. He said, without question. He said, I'm not going to lie to you. Winning takes care of a lot of problems. And he said, what I do, he said, what I would recommend anybody to do is, he said, I talk to him more than I coach him. And that's kind of an interesting comment, because, he's built his whole program on communication. He's built it on relationships. He's built it on when kids play at Duke, and I'm not saying this isn't true. Obviously, it's true at North Carolina. But some of the great programs are such a program identification the rest of their life with them, that they continue to be representatives of the program, and they help that program grow. I think Mike's one of the great communicators of all time, and I think that's how you build a program. It gives you credibility with the university, with the faculty, with boosters, with sponsors, but most of all, it gives you credibility with your players. In a one-game situation, making adjustments, assuming obviously he's had time to coach them, and to coach with an arrogance, and an arrogance built on confidence and pride and everything else. Rick Pitino is one of the best I've ever seen. I think Rick in a game, and I think if you look at his NCAA record, He's a really, really good big game coach, and again, has always been, irregardless of his talent level. As a guy's won national titles, he didn't have the best talent, even close to the best talent this year in the Big East. He wins big games because he makes great adjustments